So, the Archbishop of America, top of the pyramid, Father Alex, Vicar General, and our spiritual advisor, who we work closely with each and every day on the many, many issues that we are involved in. John Halecki is our Carpatho-Russian. He's been on the National Council, it's got to be 40 years. He was on when Dr. Borden was the national commander in the 70s, and we salute you, Archon John. Judge Bazanellis, who's our key person who gives us advice at so many levels. National Treasurer Peter Skiatis, who's done a phenomenal job, and we, certainly recognize the late, wonderful Archon James C. Fountas, who served with distinction as National Treasurer for 20 plus years. We mourn his loss this past year. He's emeritus status, a great honor. And our functionaries, Chris Stratakis, our great legal counselor, Professor Dimakopoulos, the historian who's been on a number of our pilgrimages, our Sergeant at Arms, who deals with logistics and various other items of the order, our great CPA, Assistant Treasurer, Andreas Komodromos. And now we'll go through the various members. Everyone has a story of distinction, of service to the church at so many levels. Tom Kappas in Indiana, I can't say enough about Tom. Always the first one to make the generous offering. Konstantin Karas, who does a superb job in the Archon selection chairmanship. John Katsamatidis, a legend, really, who works so well with the order and inspires us. Andreas and the professor, Fanis Economidis from San Francisco, a true archon of the great Church of Christ. Stefan Georgeson, we'll talk later about what he's contributed. Let's see. Okay. And we continue. And let me just say, Carl Hollister could not be with us today. He lost his father a couple of days ago, and he's mourning the passing of his father and dealing with the funeral arrangements. Peter Kakoyanis, superb attorney and counselor. Dr. Lucian, not only is he a great racehorse veterinarian, but he's a superb member of the National Council who chairs the Regional Commander Liaison Committee and co-chairs with Archon John Manos and Gus Publicus of Chicago, who really have done a superb job in Chicago. Michael Psados, as I said, is a miracle worker. He's helped the church at so many levels. Time, talent, treasure. Time, talent, treasure. That's you, Michael. We're very grateful to you. George Saffield has always been a prudent person whose sage advice at all meetings is deeply appreciated, who leads by example. He's a founding member of the Patriarchal Foundation, $100,000. We love you, George. Thank you for your time, talent, and treasure. Archon Rocky Sisson. He's a new Archon, relatively new, and we appointed him a few years ago to the National Council because we followed the example of the Ecumenical Patriarch when he split his 12 synod members, the 12 metropolitans who comprise the Holy and Great Synod of Constantinople, into 6 senior folks and 6 newbies. And Archon Rocky, I said, if it's great for the Ecumenical Patriarch, we'll adopt the same thing. So we have newbies on our National Council headed by Rocky. We talked about Peter Skiatis and Chris Stratakis. George Sugarakis, great, was a regional commander, now the legal counselor, general counsel of the GOA. We're very proud of all you do and continue to do, and all the tremendous pro bono work you do on the manuscripts and so many things, Archon George, your former or your prior law firm. And Dr. Limberakis, boarded in medicine and dentistry, a phenomenal head and neck surgeon for his great generosity. Our great litigator, John Zavitsanos, who's really taken on tremendous responsibilities on a number of initiatives, administrative, financial of the order. We're very grateful to you, John. And now we have 2 National Council Emeritus members, an honor to Stephen Cherpelis and Nikitas Dracotis, who served 20 plus years at least, and Dr. Callens, a regional commander emeritus. We're all grateful to this tremendous team. And these are the regional commanders. You should all know who your regional commanders are. They take great effort to get you involved, to inform you, to encourage you, to answer your questions, to bring new Archons into the fold. So these are our great regional commanders. Very grateful to have you all on board. So today we're talking about becoming a new Archon. This is an extraordinary opportunity, an extraordinary responsibility you are about to take. The Order of St. Andrew, like no other organization in the world, has one purpose, and that is to support and defend the Holy Mother Church. And we encourage you to be at the highest level of Archon stewardship, time, talent, and treasure vis-a-vis the Ecumenical Patriarchate. You know, when you're given a noble title, the French refer to it as noblesse oblige. With that nobility comes extraordinary responsibility and obligation. And that, my dear beloved Archons and Archons-elect, you will learn more about. To the newbies and to the old folks, you know about what the obligation is. Okay. Our Archon stewardship, we'll get into that. John Zavitsanos and his co-workers will certainly get into the details of that, what the expectations are. But what are we talking about? We are Archons of the Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox Church. You know, the first 1,000 years, we were one united church. The Pentarchy, Rome was number 1 in seniority and had primacy at that time, followed by Constantinople when Constantine moved the empire from Rome to Constantinople to Byzantium and named the city. Then in order of seniority, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. And those are the patron saints, the apostolic sees. These are apostolic churches. Why? Because they were founded by apostles, unlike the Protestant church. Then in 1054, this happened. It dissolved, Rome split, and the remaining 4 patriarchates stood united. And we continue to stand united 1,000 years later in full communion as one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. But you know, the church has grown. We're now 300 million worldwide. And the 4 pentarchy, the pentarchy then became 4, and now we have 15 self-governing autocephalous patriarchal churches, all in communion. And this is a list of them and the order of how they were founded. 330 to 2019. It's quite extraordinary, the chain. And this is the Orthodox Church in terms of populations and countries. You see a huge presence in the Slavic nations. And even in Northern Africa, I point to Ethiopia, 46 million Orthodox in Ethiopia. I know Presbyter Xanthi and Father Alex accompanied His All Holiness, the Ecumenical Patriarch, on a pilgrimage a number of years ago. So how did the Ecumenical Patriarch obtain jurisdiction over the whole world except for the 5 original churches? Well, it was Canon 28, the 4th Ecumenical Council in 451 AD. And what that did was give jurisdiction to all the unknown churches, the so-called barbaric nations, to the Ecumenical Patriarchate. And by doing that, nearly 1,600 years ago, the visionary church leaders at the 4th Ecumenical Council enabled the world's only superpower, the United States of America, to be under the jurisdiction of the ecumenical patriarchate. Now, wasn't that unbelievable? That was providential. And now that same canon enables the ecumenical patriarchate to grant autocephaly to various churches. And it has to Russia, Bulgaria, Ukraine most recently, and other churches. In the Middle East, when you hear about Christian persecution in the Middle East by ISIS and all of that, you're talking about 2/3 Orthodox Christians. 2/3 of the catastrophe of Christians in the Middle East has befallen on Orthodox Christians. And that's part of the whole world singling out Christians. Now, 70%, according to the Pew Foundation, which is actually a little bit higher now on more recent numbers, live under religious restrictions. Not just Christians, but everybody. 70% of the world's population lives under heavy religious restrictions. In fact, in 2018, again, the Pew Foundation came out with two indices. One, Government Restrictions Index, which codifies the official sanctions of a country against their religions and religious minorities. And they also had the Social Hostilities Index, which codifies the local people, mobs, groups, individuals who attack religious minorities. And Turkey's GRI, Government Restrictive Index, is very high, and their social religious hostilities index is high. So this is what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. And what has transpired is the genocide and the ethnic cleansing of the Orthodox Christians. In 1910, the population of the Middle East was 10% Christian. Today, it's less than 5%. In Constantinople in 1910, 20% of the population of Constantinople was Greek Orthodox. What is it today? Less than 0.01%. I mean, it's just what has happened has been the decimation of the Christian presence. A small Christian drop in a vast Muslim ocean, in the words of His All Holiness. And yet, we have survived. Constantinople, it's the confluence of Islam and Orthodox Christianity. Tremendous ethnic and religious cleansing. The ecumenical patriarchate. This was our cathedral, Hagia Sophia, for almost 1,000 years. Almost 1,000 years. Today, more humble, but you remember Christ came to Jerusalem on a donkey, not with chariots. That is for a little bit later on. This is our cathedral today. It's a beautifully appointed cathedral, and it has the relics of incredible saints of the church. And it has the relics of the three hierarchs. I mean, Saint John Chrysostom, Saint Gregory the Theologian, and Saint Basil the Great. And to see these icons and venerate them is a tremendous and moving spiritual experience. But as archons, it is our responsibility to time and again, with our time, talent, and treasure, demonstrate our respect, affection, loyalty, and obedience to the Holy Mother Church. This is our ecumenical patriarch. And to the exarch, our beloved Archbishop of America. Here we are together. Our spiritual father. You have to read this book. It's part of the newbies package, the gift package that you all got I believe Thursday or Friday, and you opened this morning. This is a tremendous resource written by Father John Chrysavgis, inviting various leaders throughout the country, throughout the world, from Pope Benedict to the Archbishop of Canterbury, to George Stephanopoulos, to Al Gore and ecology and others, to offer their insights into the ecumenical patriarch. And one of the things I remember that Pope Benedict said was, how many people know 8 languages and can spontaneously speak to someone in their native language in a group setting? If a German asks a question, or an Italian, or a Spanish person, and it gives that person asking the question immediate intimacy with our spiritual Father. That's a true gift, and that's a great charisma of His All Holiness. He is the 269th successor of the first called apostle of St. Andrew. So let's talk about 269 versus 270. A lot of times people confuse the two numbers. The ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew is the 269th successor to the first archbishop, and that was St. Andrew. So he's the 269th successor, but the 270th office holder of Archbishop of Constantinople. Really an extraordinary individual. He's first among equals, tremendous spiritual leadership, goes to troubled areas around the world. Hurricane Katrina, World Ward 9 in New Orleans 15 years ago, bringing various Christian, Jewish, Islamic people together. A protector of the environment. And every number of years, he has a symposium in which he calls scientists, scholars, business people together here in the Arctic Ocean to talk about ecology and bringing people together, exchanging ideas. Known throughout the world as an ecumenical patriarch, honored by our presidents over the years. And we were so much looking forward to His All Holiness's visit to Washington this past October. That did not happen. They were all tremendous events at the White House, here, there, but it didn't work out. So what happened instead? President Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the State Department still talking about it, went to the Phanar, went to Istanbul, Constantinople, met the ecumenical patriarchate, His All Holiness, at the Phanar, the first Republican to do so, at the Phanar, and talked about religious freedom. He did not go to Ankara. He did not meet with any official Turkish members of the government. And I have to tell you, that elicited an unbelievable response in Ankara. Bravo tu. Honored at the UN, here with the Congressional Gold Medal and a record number of votes. This medal has been given to George Washington and others, and His All Holiness received the highest number of votes, and Father Alex and Andy and Mike Manitas were so essential in putting that together. Now, our Archbishop Elpidophoros, he was elected last year. He was enthroned this past year. He's young. He's only 53. And yet he is the first Archbishop of America, the very first to be a true son of the ecumenical patriarchate. He was raised there. He was a deacon. He was a priest monk. He became a metropolitan. He became the chief secretary of the Patriarchal Synod. And I'll always remember that period of time, because when the minutes would be released and press releases would be released, he would do them in multiple languages, including English, which was great. And I really appreciated that, Your Eminence. And Archon pilgrimages, that's always been a great opportunity for us. I see Jim Pandelides on the call. Great to have you, Jim. Jim was on an Archon pilgrimage, and we'll show that. it's a great opportunity, but it's really difficult right now with the pandemic, with the religious persecution in Turkey, with the security in Turkey. But let me go back. This is when Pope Benedict came to the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and you'll see a metropolitan in the background over there. So that was a wonderful pilgrimage. Here we are at the Balakli Hospital. This hospital, under the aegis of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, is the largest drug and rehab hospital in all of Southeastern Europe. And they treat 30 to 40,000 Turks, not Greeks, Turks, very effectively. We had a tour of that facility. And then a year after after the falling of Constantinople, a year after that, in 1454, this school came into existence, the Great School of the Nation. And it teaches the Greek Orthodox people who have been there for hundreds of years since the fall, Orthodoxy, Hellenism, and the order makes an annual contribution to that institution. The return of the sacred relics of St. Gregory the Theologian and St. John Chrysostom was a huge highlight Archon pilgrimage. And as a physician and specifically as a radiologist, to see the skeletal relics of these men, these living human beings, the radius, the ulna, the scapula, the ilium, it was very moving for me. And when the time comes and when pilgrimage returns to the order, you need to bring your family, as I did with my son Anthony, named after his great grandfather, Dr. Anthony Borden. Here's another pilgrimage. You'll see a number of people who are on the call today, the Pandalidis brothers and Andy Liveris and others, Alex Pritsos. Arthur Anton of blessed memory. What a great Archon he was. He just passed away, 90-something years old. And so many others can see yourselves there. I salute you again. To go to the Ecumenical Patriarchate is really a tremendous privilege, but it shows our personal support to the Ecumenical Patriarchate, a drop of Christianity in a sea of Islam, and it's really important. And as soon as things lighten up with the pandemic and the religious persecution in Turkey, we will be back. But we still went this past year, and you'll learn more about that. This was a pilgrimage, the patriarchal pilgrimage, which the Turks did not allow us to repair over the decades and decades and decades, and it fell into disrepair. The Ecumenical Patriarch sued the Republic of Turkey because of this and won in the European Court of Human Rights. And here we are at Smyrna, the great catastrophe. You know, this is symbolic. Let me tell you, this is still happening in Turkey. They may not be as blatant as killing and murdering on the streets, but the same type of thing exists in Turkey. Don't make no mistake about that. Another pilgrimage that took place a year ago in 2019 is when Archons joined an archdiocesan delegation led by Father Alex, the Vicar General, to meet with His All Holiness in Brussels on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of the Belgium Archdiocese. This was an opportunity for us to speak with His All Holiness, to speak frankly to His All Holiness, and it was a great blessing to share insights of our concerns and our positions in the church. So, you know, His All Holiness is a tremendous listener. That's another thing you'll read in the book. He is a tremendous listener and will listen and listen and listen. He has the patience of Job. And people will do things and will do things and will do things, and he has patience and patience and patience. But then he acts when he needs to act. And I salute Archon Boris and Juliana and Archon Theo Rousas, who hosted us in Belgium. great archons, John Katsimatidis and John Piavolis, and their beloved wives, Margot and Marissa. And my wife. Now, this is a cardinal that we had met initially in 2004 when I had the great privilege to accompany His All Holiness to the Vatican with John Paul. And we met there over 20 years ago, and it was almost 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And he was there in Belgium and honoring His All Holiness. It was a great honor to see him again. And these are our AHEPA friends and colleagues, Savas Stivikos, happy name day, Savas, and Archon Carl Hollister, again, who lost his father. And these are Archon leaders of AHEPA who were also in Belgium at the time. Our group. And His All Holiness led a very historic pilgrimage to the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Why do I say it's historic? Because this is the last group of Orthodox Christians who went to Hagia Sophia. Can you imagine how fortunate these people were? The last people who traveled to the Fanar, to Hagia Sophia, and went as pilgrims to what was formerly our cathedral, became a neutral museum, and now is a practicing mosque. His All Holiness with the Archbishop of America and our great archons who made that trip. What do? This is what we do. We have developed over the years a multifaceted domestic and international strategy. But I tell you, one of the most important things the order did was secure a documentary on 60 Minutes. That was a milestone event, a watershed event. When Bob Simon asked His All Holiness, do you sometimes feel crucified in your own country? And that was the response of His All Holiness. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Let me tell you, that was an unbelievable statement that took a lot of guts to say in Turkey, under the noses of the authoritarian state of the Turkish Republic, Erdogan et al. And that sums up the relationship of the Ecumenical Patriarchate and the government of Turkey. And then there was an explosion of local press reaction. Are we crucifying the patriarch? And that project, I have to tell you, it was a 2-year project. Jim Spiros told me that one of the high-level cable guys is a guy named Nick, I don't recall his,
Davatzis.
Yes, thanks. Nick Davatzis, Jim. And I said, I want to call Nick Davatzis. He has a cable experience. I would love to get on 60 Minutes. So I called him out of the blue. Actually, he was honored as the New York Parade chair as the Order of St. Andrew was honored. We got together, we met. I invited him to my house in Philadelphia because his son is a professor at Temple University, also an institution in Philadelphia. We broke bread together. We started talking. I said, Nick, is there any possibility that we could bring our issue of religious freedom and the denial of institutional human rights of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, 300 million Orthodox Christians we're talking about? And he said, I think so. There's someone who owes me a few chits. I think I'll cash him in. So he arranged a meeting at 60 Minutes headquarters. I said, oh my gosh, I got to be prepared for this. So I get a shopping bag full of data that the Archons accumulated over the past few years, documenting religious freedom violation after religious freedom violation, brought the shopping bag full of documents, and I'll tell you how we got those documents later. And we dropped them. I went to the office. I dropped them on the desk of the editor. And she says, well, listen, I want to bring in a gentleman who goes to Turkey and vacations every year. And he came in, he was a producer, and he said to me, I'll be happy to look at this, but quite frankly, that's hard to believe. I go there every year and I don't see any religious persecution. Well, the rest is history. They sent a team, they did their own investigation. You know how 60 Minutes operates. And it's a double-edged sword. We weren't sure if they were going to do something that was going to hurt us or help us. But man, did they help us. And Bob Simon did a phenomenal job. We gave CBS 60 Minutes the Athenagoras Human Rights Award. Here's Bob Simon with his beloved wife, Francois, with the Archbishop at the time. This is the whole 60 Minutes team. Jeff Fager in the middle here, who was the chair of 60 Minutes. Bob Simon, Ed Ratliff, who was the producer, and Greek Karzis. You see Mike Emanuel back here. He's a great Fox News guy. And if you watch him on Fox News, he wears his Archon lapel flag pin, by the way. So he got the other, we gave the 60 Minutes and CBS the Athenagoras Human Rights Award. And what happened after that? That led to 7 Orthodox Christianity, not just regular, but Orthodox Christianity documentaries, from Jerusalem to Mount Athos ×2, the Copts in Egypt, and now 2 on St. Nicholas. Unbelievable, unbelievable. That was a watershed event in the history of religious freedom, fighting for religious freedom for the order. And that was, I have to say, an achievement of the Order of St. Andrew, of which I am very proud. And the other irony here, and maybe providential, was Bob Simon was born on May 29th, the very day of the fall of Constantinople. Can you imagine? And Harry Ratliff, you know, he was the producer. I went to his memorial service, and I have to tell you, his memorial service, which was attended by everyone at CBS, was a tribute to the ecumenical patriarchate and orthodoxy. One of the dying words of Harry Ratliff was, "Thank God St. Peter will be at the gates, because when they know what we've done for orthodoxy and the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew, I think I'm going to get a pass." Those are his words, and they were related at his memorial service. Quite amazing. Anyway, so what are the issues that we're fighting about? In Turkey, the ecumenical patriarchate lacks legal personality. That means they do not exist in the eyes of the government of Turkey. The ecumenical patriarchate cannot buy, sell, or inherit property. They cannot alienate property, is the legal term. Can't buy, sell, or inherit. You know, when the Turks took over the modern republic, they made the church document all their properties that they own. So in 1936, at a minimum, we documented 8,000 properties. Then in 1999, 60 years later, the 10,000 became 2,000. Why? Why did they become so few in number? And today, less than 500, because they would not allow us to repair them, to upkeep them. They would not allow the board of directors who watch over them and administrate them have elections. They would die off, no elections, no board. Things would go into disrepair, no building permits to repair. They become condemned and taken by the state. That's the plan. And they've succeeded. Now, what are they doing in the property realm? They are taking our churches, our historic churches that were converted by Ataturk in 1920 to museums, neutral museums, now to practicing mosques. This is what they did. They are obliterating the the Orthodox Christian, the Greek Orthodox, the Christian presence at Hagia Sophia, the greatest church for 1,500 years. That's what they are doing. They are committing cultural memoricide. Take a look on July 24th when they opened it up. Take a look. Thousands and thousands of Muslims came to Hagia Sophia. And by the way, the term Hagia Sophia is an Islamic name. It's an actual Islamic name. I was reading pediatric cases one day, and I came across the name Hagia Sophia something. I said, oh my God, they're using this as a name, I thought to myself. That was quite a shock. So this is Hagia Sophia today, my friends. Take a look. Take a look. Erdogan. This is Erdogan in the middle of all this. I've had enough. The Church of Hagia Sophia, the most magnificent iconography in the world, became a mosque. This iconography is unbelievable. And again, those lucky pilgrims who accompanied His Eminence the Archbishop got to see it before it became a mosque. Another one in Nicaea, where the Christian creed, I believe in one God, was created. That's now a mosque. Another mosque. Not only that, regarding property, they actually interfere in the selection of the ecumenical patriarchate. How do they do that? And why do they do that? So as Orthodox Christians, we believe as part of our faith that Bartholomew is the 269th successor of this person, St. Andrew, who was the first apostle of this God-man, Christ. So when they block the election, interfere in the election, this is not an administrative interference. This is an interference in our faith belief system. Don't forget that. That's religious persecution. And what do? They have these laws. One of them is the so-called Teskari, in which they require Turkish citizenship of an ecumenical patriarch. That was created in 1923. And on top of that, they doubled down on it in 1970, and they added additional voting requirements in this law called a talamat, in which they get to cross off names of whomever they want, because they want us to submit the 3 final candidates to the government for their approval. So how did we learn all about this stuff? Well, this is how we learned about this when Archon George Rackus, who was accompanied by my late and beloved uncle, Theodjem Limberakis, who just passed away a few months ago, and my beloved nephew, Archon-elect James Rackus, they spent a couple of weeks in 2006 and 2007 in Istanbul digging up all this stuff, making copies, not only making copies of stuff, giving it to a certain country in a diplomatic pouch to take to the United States, because we were concerned for the safety of George and Theodjem and young Jim being detained at the airport because we were taking out this documentation. And look at John Mandala's family. What a beautiful family. Look at them. That's great, John. We love you. Look at those beautiful children. And look now, Chalki. We're hitting 50 years. Next year, it'll be 50 years of the forcible closure of the only seminary we have in Constantinople, Istanbul. The only seminary we have. And what is ironic and providential at the same time, as the dean of that seminary in absentia and the abbot of that monastery that dates back to St. Photius days was our own Archbishop of America, Elpidiophoros. It was closed down 50 years ago. Just unbelievable. Empty classrooms. You should know a little bit about Chalki. It operated for 127 years. 1,000 students graduated. 330 became bishops. 2 patriarchs of Alexandria. 3 patriarchs of Antioch. You know, the gallery is preventing me from seeing the top. How many patriarchs of Constantinople? I'm missing it.
12.
12, thank you. So how do I get the gallery up away from my slides? Someone can tell me that later. But the point is, Chalki was an important institution that's been closed for nearly 50 years. Is that Frank there that I see? Great to have you on, Frank. Welcome.
I think.
No ecumenical status. That's not a huge deal, but you ought to know that that ecumenical title has been in existence since the 6th century, the 500s. And when Secretary of State Pompeo visited His All Holiness, he referred to him as Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, not the local bishop of Istanbul. So as a consequence of these other issues, what has transpired more recently is this very dangerous disinformation and propaganda campaign coming out of Turkey and Russia, to the point where they were blaming the Ecumenical Patriarch for the attempted coup of the Turkish government in 2016. Lies. But we documented the lies. We went on the websites and we came across a false article that was attributed to Ambassador Hughes, a former US ambassador, that Ambassador Hughes stated that Ecumenical Patriarch was implicit and an accomplice and complicit in the overthrow of the attempted overthrow of the government. And we had to go, and thanks to Archon Ambassador Patrick Theros, we had to go to Ambassador Hughes and ask him to issue a formal retraction of that article. This is the stuff we're dealing with. They lie all the time. So during that coup, it was a tremendous crackdown. Tens of thousands of people were imprisoned, journalists were arrested, social media was curtailed and stopped. In fact, there are more journalists jailed in Turkey than in any other country in the world. And during that coup, what did Erdogan do? All his political rivals he threw in jail, or they ran away. And those who could, you'll see them working in the United States at various think tanks and institutions of higher learning. So this is these 5 problems: the disinformation, the misinformation, and the daily incrimination and the daily attacks and intimidation of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, from bombs thrown to, when we were there a number of years ago, they confiscated our passports at the church of, when Benedict visited, Pope Benedict, they confiscated passports of the American pilgrims. Think about that. You think you feel naked in a church without your American passport? When we were told by the government officials, be sure to bring your passport so you gain entry. Well, the reason they asked us to take them was so they could confiscate them. We did get them back through the assistance of our ambassador. So time and time again, the Turkish government attacks the Ecumenical Patriarchate. They imply things, they say things blatantly, but let us never forget that of the 150 some odd ecumenical patriarchs that have been around the past couple of centuries, six died violent deaths. 105 were driven away by the Turks, 27 abdicated. So I came across this by a a British historian that really is very moving on what happened on April 22nd, 1821, a month after the Declaration of Independence of the modern Hellenic state. And these were his words. Strenuous exertions were made to fit out a force to crush the rising at its center. That's the Greek independence rising in Greece. Meanwhile, as this would take time, the Sultan determined by a signal example, he wanted to make a signal to strike terror into the rebels, the Greek rebels. According to the law of Ottoman Empire, the Orthodox patriarch was responsible for the good behavior of his flock, right? The millet system, the good behavior of his flock. So what happened on that black Easter Saturday? A decree was issued by the government deposing the Sultan, deposing the patriarch, ordering the bishops to proceed, the synod, to proceed at once to the election of a new patriarch. And while the new patriarch was receiving the investiture of his office, Gregorios, still in his sacred robes, was led out and hanged before the gates of his own palace. The body, and these are the words of the British historian, after hanging for a day or two, was cut down, dragged by a Jewish rabble through the streets, and finally cast into the Bosporus. The execution of the patriarch was worse than a crime. It was a mistake. It was intended and taken as a gauge of defiance flung down to all Christendom. And what happened? Russia recalled its ambassador and its entire embassy from Constantinople as a reaction, an Orthodox country, as a reaction to the hanging of ecumenical patriarch Gregory V. Eternal be his memory. So this is the gate where it happened in 1821, 5 months after March 21st. And every month, or every year on April 10th, it's commemorated. We were fortunate enough to be there on one April 10th. We saw His Eminent, His All Holiness, observe the memory of Gregorios and offer a Trisayon. It was very moving, I have to say. So Christians are under attack. And this is something Doctors Stephen and Anna Limberakis, at their expense of time, talent, and treasure, and I underline treasure here, they rebuilt a monastery of the Holy Transfiguration, which is on Chalki, Hybedalia, on Chalki. And then when the forestry officials of the government of Turkey heard about it, they went on a rampage and destroyed it. Thank you, Dr. Stephen, Archon Stephen, and Dr. Anna. This is what they did. It was unbelievable. So we need to address this because it comes to our own shores. It's not only in Turkey. This is what Turkey does in America. This is outside the Turkish embassy in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago. Erdogan is across the street in front of the Turkish embassy. American citizens, many of Turkish descent, are protesting the crackdown on human rights and religious freedom. So what does Erdogan do? He sends his security detail, thugs, to attack these peaceful American citizens, plural, beat them up, bloody them. And the New York Times had it all recorded. It was an unbelievable recording that the New York Times published. They actually published this, and the police came, they arrested folks, It was really an unbelievable scene. It was an unbelievable scene, I have to say. People bleeding. And who was there all along? Who was there all along? How about that? Despicable. This is what the Archons are doing domestically, internationally. We have to get things back to normal. Our efforts in America are multifold. In Congress, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, and the State Department. President Trump, through the efforts of Secretary of State Pompeo, held last year a ministerial to advance religious freedom. This had never happened before in the history of the United States government. They devoted, a ministerial is when you invite all foreign ministers around the world to congregate to discuss an issue of concern. What did the Trump administration do? They were concerned about religious freedom. What did they do? They invited all the foreign, there were over 1,000 delegates, and the order was represented. Wait a minute here. The Archbishop spoke. He spoke about Halki. First, he spoke in terms of first person. He was the dean. He was the abbot of the seminary. Very, very well received. Let's see, how do I do this? Here he is speaking. We had the privilege to witness the ministerial, and we met people who had spoken at our religious freedom conferences over the past 10 years we started them. In 2010, and this is Cole Durham, known throughout the world for his advocacy and his scholarship on religious freedom. And this was Archbishop Efstrati at a time when Ukraine just received its autocephaly. We saw him there, we worked with him. Archbishop Angelos of London. This is the Archbishop, the Coptic Archbishop, who was the Archbishop of these martyrs of the church. And you'll remember this photo. These are the martyrs, the 20 martyrs who were kidnapped and beheaded by ISIS on the shores of Libya, not far from Tripoli. And Archbishop Angelos was his archbishop, and he spoke about their ministry and how they became saints later on in the church. And during that ministerial, the Archons hosted a sidebar, and thank you, Andy, and thank you, Mike Manitas, again for helping us in organizing that. And we had a phenomenal sidebar. What's a sidebar? When we had dinner with the U.S. Ambassador of Religious Freedom a few months earlier in Washington, the judge and I drove up to Washington. We met Andy, we met Ambassador Negroponte, and we met the Ambassador of International Religious Freedom. We had dinner together at the Monocle Restaurant, which is a great meeting place, a dinner place, owned by a Greek, of course, where all the senators used to gather. And I was a page in the Senate in high school, and I used to go there to round up senators for a vote. Anyway, we met at the Monocle, and the Ambassador Brown of International Religious Freedom asked me, he said, do you think the Order of St. Andrew would be interested in doing a sidebar at our State Department ministerial on religious freedom? And I right away, of course, I said, of course we would, Mr. Ambassador. It would be our honor to do so. And so when everyone left, I asked Andy to stay. I said, Andy, what's a sidebar? So we learned what a sidebar was. It was a meeting of individuals. In this case, it was meeting of members of Congress. Can you imagine? We had members of Congress. We had the Speaker of the House, second in line to the presidency, on an Order of St. Andrew sidebar on religious freedom, on the ecumenical patriarchate, not just religious freedom in general, but religious freedom on the ecumenical patriarchate. Key. And there's the Archbishop and Chris Smith, a Republican representative, and we had members of both parties. John Sarbanes, representative, we offer our condolences on the loss of his beloved father, and giant in religious freedom for work on behalf of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, Paul Sarbanes, Bob Menendez, and other people, and Gus Limberakis, Archon Gus Limberakis, really, we can't thank him enough. He's always there day in and day out, and co-chair of the Hellenic Caucus. Elliot Engel, who lost his primary to a new wave of progressive Democrats, but he was always a champion of human rights and the Ecumenical Patriarchate per se. Chris Van Hollen, married to a Greek Orthodox senator from Maryland, so that's it was a tremendous religious freedom ministerial sidebar we had. And of course, His Eminence, the Archbishop, visited the President of the United States and the Vice President and Secretary of State Alex Azar. And I have to say, Father Alex is there. He usually isn't in any of these pictures. He's always behind the scenes. But let me tell you, he makes these scenes possible. No Father Alex, no meeting. So we're very grateful for the behind the scenes work. And these are very, very important because these pictures are seen around the world. And in fact, I received articles in the Turkish press, in Turkish, that we had translated, that showed pictures of the Archbishop with the President, and the Archbishop and Father Alex with Pompeo, and the Order of St. Andrew, and what we do, all splashed over the Turkish press, and how these people, are critical of the religious freedom stance of the government of Turkey. And I have to say, Republican or Democrat, Democrat or Republican, whoever you are, having the president-elect have such a tremendous relationship with the ecumenical patriarch himself. And if you look at this statue, this in the background, this was a gift of the order some years ago, symbolizing peace around the world, the doves of peace encircling a globe. John Helecki managed to find that. And then the sitting vice president receiving the Athenagoras Human Rights Award. Is that providential or what? In fact, we had lunch in Constantinople with Tony, help me out here, the State Department,
Tony Blinken.
Yeah, the State Department designate. We visited the West Wing of the White House on Ash Wednesday when Dennis McDonough, the designate for the Veterans Affairs Committee, had the cross of Ash Wednesday, a good Roman Catholic. So there's a relationship here. Again, Republican or Democrat, Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter. We work with all administrations, but I have to say, it is providential to see these two pictures before us. There is a relationship, and we look forward to nurturing that and working for concrete changes in Turkey that will, in fact, impact the ecumenical patriarch. That's what we want. And the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, this is a Zogby, the Zogby poll. This is the Zogby and his brother behind the Zogby poll, political polling, among others, Catholics and others. And every year they come up with an egregious list of human rights violators. And guess who's named year after year after year after year? This country. And Andy, and your son Mike, you're our guys in Washington. We're very grateful to you. You work day and night. We're very, very grateful. Thank you so much. Now, the other interesting component of our religious freedom initiative was the domestic aspect. So in 2008, we wanted to go back and pass a religious freedom resolution, not just religious freedom in general, who can say no to that, but we wanted a religious freedom resolution passed in every state legislature focused on the ecumenical patriarchate. The ecumenical patriarchate. So some of our friendly states, California, Pennsylvania, New Jersey actually was the first, passed these state resolutions. But I have to tell you, it was getting harder and harder because, you know, how many people are in North and South Dakota that are Greek Orthodox or in other places? Well, this is what remains today. All these states, 46 states, have actually passed a religious freedom resolution on the ecumenical patriarchate. You think that was easy to do in North Carolina? I mean, in North Dakota, in Oregon and Washington, in Texas? That's a whole story. John Zafisanos has to tell you about Texas. That's an unbelievable story. And Chris Pappas, I don't know if Chris is on the call, but man, that got his Greek up, if you will, and he worked day and night with Zavitsanos, getting all the parishioners of the churches in Austin, great church there, Dallas, Texas, great church there, Houston, Annunciation, huge church, to inundate the state legislature with letters calling for the state legislature to pass a religious freedom resolution in Texas. And guess what happened? It may be called a Lone Star State, but this is a golden state, you can see. And who made that possible? This guy here from Atlanta, Stefan Georgeson, an attorney, hardworking guy. And it was a great, and he brought all these resolutions to him on one of our trips to Constantinople and to Ankara, and plopped them on the ambassador's desk in Ankara. It was a very effective statement, I have to say. Great job, Stefan. Thank you. And now, this is something that I see as a huge potential for the survival and financial well-being of the ecumenical patriarchate. The ecumenical patriarchate will always survive, but what the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew Foundation for the Sacred See of St. Andrew was established to enable the economic underpinnings of the Ecumenical Patriarchate to be solid, sound, and without having to rely on a foreign country, Greece. And we love Greece. We're all Greek Americans or Ukrainian Americans or Carpatho-Thracian, whatever. We love our ancestral heritage. But the Ecumenical Patriarchate must not be reliant on government subsidy. The light must continue to shine in the darkness. We want to enable to grant economic independence. We want the Ecumenical Patriarchate to have a global presence deserving of its 300 million flock. We want the Greek Orthodox Ecumenical Patriarchate to foster inter-Orthodox dialogue. You know, the wall that Russia's building, you know, excommunicating this patriarchate and excommunicating that's all got to stop. And His All Holiness is the one to do it. And we want the Ecumenical Patriarch to be able to make charitable and humanitarian aid when it counts. We have an incredible board. John Katz, Michael Psalos does not happen to be in this picture, but he's a key person who's been contributing tremendously. But I have to say, George Saffield, as a founding member, has been tremendous. And one of the things we Archons wanted when we established this is to have women on the board of trustees. We wanted women on the board of trustees. It's an important participation in people who comprise more than half the population. And we have two outstanding women, Maria Alwyn, and Aphrodite Skiadas, former outstanding president of National Philopticos. They've done a phenomenal job, the women contributing. And, you know, Father Alex, always behind the scenes, and he doesn't want to do it today, but I've asked him to speak on this issue because it's so important. This foundation represents the future economic sustenance of the ecumenical patriarchate. And I just want to say one thing. There are some people who have made $100,000 contributions all at once, and others. I'm not in that position, but what I'm doing, and maybe some people would think about this as well, I make an $833.33 contribution along with my beloved wife, Maria, every month to the foundation so that we too can become a founding member. It's $100,000 or more to become a founding member. We hope and will invite, we haven't launched the fundraising aspect of it, but a number of people have committed 100,000, John Katz, George Saffield, Dean Pohl, Michael Psaros, and I'm missing others, and forgive me, and others, and Peter and Aphrodite Skiathis, who committed $100,000 as well. We're very grateful. Think about doing a monthly. If you're not able to do a big chunk like that, and most people can't, think about small chunks every month. Fasuli, but I'm not going to finish that story. Father Alex, may I invite you, sir?
Well, you're very kind. And first of all, what an inspiration that you had. And I have to say, George Saffield, I think it was very important that George really drove this with his great passion and vision. And that's why I would imagine the Nicholas Bourris Award was given to George, because he has the Archons right in his heart and the Mother Church.
Yeah.
Anthony, you're to be commended, because the ecumenical patriarch many, many years ago realized that he cannot be ecumenical patriarch in the regards just it is that way canonically and all that, but this is a real world, and you say, where's the money? Well, now for the first time, the independence of the ecumenical patriarchate will be free because of what the order is doing. And it's giving a vision to Archbishop Epiphotos that we are going to lead the way here, the church in America, the Order of St. Andrew, but we are going to try to establish it with the other eparchies of the throne. And this is really a visionary thing. I know that His All Holiness, he said, we've done many things together. The one thing I would love to see, and he told me that 20, 30 years ago, is for the ecumenical patriarchate to be independent of any, as you said, any governmental sustenance and support, any governmental interference in their financial, because then it means if you're in there financially, you could undermine the institution itself. So this is really visionary for the Order of St. Andrew. And as a friend of mine always said, wealth always chases vision, never catches up to need. Once you've announced it, you had the Zeiss couple, Stephen and Frosini Zeiss, that said, I'm putting it in our estate, and they committed $300,000. So we are going to begin a fundraising program in around January in the beginning, as we get out of the COVID crisis with the vaccine. We're going to be vaccinated. We're going to vaccinate the ecumenical patriarchate with our gifts, with our love and our support. And all founders, and founders are 100,000 and above. When the ecumenical patriarch comes in to America in the middle of October, we are going to be having a founders luncheon with all those couples who have committed $100,000 towards the endowment fund. And I haven't got clearance from the Archbishop, but I know he will support that. And I know that the ecumenical patriarch looks forward to thanking everybody personally. And again, Anthony, this is just visionary on your part, but you are actually making one of the great dreams of the Bartholomew come true. And I know how humbled he was and very moved he was when he heard that this is named after him. just like Archbishop Iakovos, when we named Leadership 100 after him. This is a living testimony that the living church will continue.
Yeah. Amen, Father. So true. Amen. So again, we're very excited about this. It hasn't been formally launched. So there's been background fundraising among the leadership of the order, and we'll be reaching out to all members of the governing body, the National Council, the regional commanders, and our fellow brother archons. Thank you. And a shout out to Chris Tritakis and the work of Tom Constance. His law firm enabled us to do the bylaws, enabled us to get the 501c3 nonprofit status from the IRS, and we're very, very grateful. We continue our struggle for religious freedom in Europe. We work in the embassy, the EU rotating presidency, the European Court of Human Rights, the embassies, wherever we go, the OSCE. We were there at the European Court of Human Rights trial and hearing of the Ecumenical Patriarchate suing Turkey to get its orphanage back that was confiscated by the government. We met in Geneva discussing legal strategies. Who do you see here? Jay Sekulow, the Archbishop, John Zavitsanos, George Rakas, Father Alex, Metropolitan Emmanuel, and of course His All Holiness and Metropolitan Melito, and discussing legal strategy, how to improve the situation in Turkey. We visit countries that have the European Union presidency, the rotating presidency. And we went to Hungary when Ambassador Eleni Tsokopoulos Kounalakis, who's now the Lieutenant Governor of California, was the ambassador. We met with the Chancellor of the Republic of Austria during his EU presidency, facilitated by Metropolitan Arsenios and Metropolitan Emmanuel of France in the background. And here we are with the Chancellor. The youngest Chancellor, you should know, the youngest Chancellor in Europe, the youngest presiding officer, head of state in Europe, and the youngest bishop, Greek Orthodox Metropolitan in Europe. So the two of them had a camaraderie as young leaders. And wherever we go, we meet with our brother Catholics. And this was the Secretary General of the OSCE. We send delegations every year to Warsaw, Poland, but they are based in Vienna, Austria. And we went and met with the top guy at the OSCE meeting. We meet with the patriarchal lawyers on properties, and the judges chairs that committee. We've met with the deputy prime minister on religious freedom violations. We meet with the top Muslim clerics in Turkey in their offices, complaining about the complete lack of religious freedom. We meet with the locals. There's a Protestant. This guy, Burmak is his name, is the leader of 20 million Alevi Muslims, 20 million in Turkey who don't have religious freedom. Then when Erdogan was in the United States at a UN meeting, they come every September for the UN meetings. The Archbishop, Mike Jaharis, Dennis Meal, John Katz, they wanted to have a meeting with the Archbishop, Father Alex and I. So we had a meeting, and look at this book here. You see this book here? It says Istanbul. It's one of those cocktail books. That cocktail book was given to me on August 31, 1988, during the first pilgrimage of the Archons during my tenure as, first year of my tenure as commander. So I brought the book. I had the business card of the then mayor of Istanbul, future Prime Minister Erdogan. You see it here, and he had a beautiful inscription on it. And then I brought the book with me at the meeting, and I said, you know, as a human interest story, Mr. Prime Minister, you have to know the Archons have been working on religious freedom for 20 years, and we haven't seen much progress. And sure enough, he wrote another inscription, updated inscription in that book. So that was quite a thing. And then when he came in, again, September, UN time, the Archbishop made a visit to him. You know, the Archons would go to Ankara all the time. In 2002, with our beloved late commander, Nicholas J. Boris. Nicholas J. Boris, par excellence, no one ever like him, unbelievable. On his dying bed, he signals to me, Anthony, come here. This is the truth. He says, does the order need anything? Does the order need anything? Are your resources okay? Could barely talk. It was really unbelievable. This is Nicholas Boris. Anytime the order needed anything, he would just say, I'll cover it. And don't let anyone know I did it. So it became Mr. Anonymous, but that was NJB. And he came and he helped plant, along with the Archon delegation, a tree from California as a memorial to 9/11. And then we went 10 years later on 2011 and saw the tree. And then again, I alluded to this earlier, two visits of a sitting vice president. Never before in the history of our country has a seated vice president visited the ecumenical patriarchate and His All Holiness, the ecumenical patriarch, not once, but twice. Not once, but twice. It was really extraordinary. We send delegations, and I tip my hat to Archon Konstantin Karas, who does such a great job with the Archon Selection Committee, and Rocky Sisson, and we send, and Stamati Kartalopoulos has gone in the past, and Dr. Lucian, and the first person who went was Dr. Spiro Makris, whose name day it is today. Dr. Spiro, if you're on the call, happy name day. And to Spiros Piraeus, if you're on the call, happy name day. And here we are with His All Holiness representing the Trump administration at the FNAR. You know, when Obama went, he did not go to the FNAR. That was a little bit of a disappointment. I hope I'm not spilling the beans here, but that was a little bit of a disappointment. But now we have a sitting president, or a president-elect, who's been a sitting vice president. So our hopes and dreams are up there. Anyway, we aim for the moon, but we'll land in the stars, right? Anyway, then we have a relationship with Oxford University. Jay Sekulow in Oxford had a religious freedom conference, and we made a presentation not too dissimilar from this, in front of scholars from around the world who were experts on religious freedom. That was a tremendous symposium, and we have a planned religious freedom in Oxford. We have relationships. We have a young Oxford PhD student who's our man on the ground there, but it was going to take place next year, but it's been moved to the following year. We'll let you know about that. And I'm going to kind of speed along because the time is running. The Archons were very important in the selection and the facilitation of the Great and Holy Council. It hadn't happened in nearly 900 years. Archons were key people in making it happen logistically and technically. And these are some of the Archons who participated. We're very grateful to Mike Carlutzos, Nick Furis, Teo Nikolakis, Alex Pritzl, who was the gatekeeper. No one without a credential could not get into the chambers without going through Alex. So he earned his Sergeant at Arms stripes, let me tell you. Panagos and others. And the Archons hosted the farewell dinner. I won't go through the various topics discussed, but it was an extraordinary meeting once every 1,000 years. You know, we have religious freedom conferences every number of years. We've had 3. Our 4th one will be at Oxford. It brings people from all over the world. Here we are at the European Parliament. This is a minister of Turkey. This was a justice of the European Court of Human Rights representing Turkey, who voted unanimously to return the patriarchal um, uh, orphanage back to the ecumenical patriarch. He was a member, and he attended our religious freedom conference. Here we have our international religious freedom, tearing down walls in Berlin, Germany. Couldn't get a better name. Our participants, I recognize someone in the front row there. And again, special thanks to George Rakis, who chaired the first two conferences. He did a phenomenal job. We're always grateful to him. Our third conference had unbelievable venues. The Trump Hotel had phenomenal facility. The Capitol, the Kennedy Caucus Room, where Nixon was impeached. I mean, historic places. The museum, the U.S. Institute for Peace. Archbishop Angelos was there, and various senators, Rubio. The Secretary of Congress, made possible with Archon-elect James Rakis, Senator Langford, Ben Cardin, part of the Democratic leadership, and others. Jay was there, and Andrew Economou. And Mike Manitas really did a phenomenal job. We're very grateful to you, and we tip our hats to you, Mike. And then as a result of that, we met at the Archdiocese, bringing people from around the world to discuss the results of the Washington, D.C. Religious Freedom Conference. You'll see people from all around the world. And we came up with, one of the things we came up was with ChristianPersecution.com. That's the birth and inception of ChristianPersecution.com. There were many, many people involved. Ukraine autocephaly, we were very involved in that because that was a manifestation of the authority and prerogatives of the ecumenical patriarchate that Russia wanted to do this to. And we fought tooth and nail against that. We did a lot of different things, and it came true. This wasn't a matter of interference, in the words of the ecumenical patriarch, in the internal affairs of the Church of Russia, because Ukraine does not lie within its jurisdiction. It will occur because it is right. And it's a long, complicated history, starting with Saint Photius, who sent his relatives Cyril and Methodius to Christianize the Slavs. And then the Mongols invaded Kiev, and then Kiev, which began Christianity, moved to Moscow. And it's complicated, but the bottom line is this: autocephaly in 2019. It's a huge accomplishment, and that's the actual Thomas of autocephaly. Look at this handwritten, calligraphied Thomas, very impressive document. His All Holiness signing it and giving it in Ukraine, this is in Ukraine, to Metropolitan Epiphania of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. And for that, we gave Metropolitan Epiphania of Ukraine the last year's Athenagoras Human Rights Award. It was an impressive ceremony. And if you go to our 2018 annual report, you'll learn more about that. We even had a town hall meeting where over 1,000 people around the world called about and asked questions to our panel led by the patriarchal representatives, Metropolitan Emmanuel, and then various scholars, and of course led by professor and historian of the order Dimokopoulos. And I have to give special thanks to Archon Ted Theophilus, who oversaw all the details and did so many things behind the scenes and in front of clear as day on the initiatives of the Order of St. Andrew on this very important issue of Ukrainian autocephaly. Thank you, Archon Ted. You know, we have a lot of resources. St. Nicholas, tremendous Archon participation in that. We have so many Archons who made sacrificial $1 million contributions, for some not so sacrificial, and for many very sacrificial. very necessary to get this off the ground. Thank you again, Father Alex, with the background. Read this book. It's in your box. It'll tell you about the history of your Ophikion, which was individually selected by the Ecumenical Patriarch based on the biography you submitted to us. We have websites, archons.org. We have an app. Everyone needs to get the app, download the app. You'll learn more about how to do that on the next session, the boot camp. It's a sophisticated app. It's been upgraded. It does high light mode, dark mode, in-between mode. It does everything. It's unbelievable. And again, that's John Mandala and Rocky Sisson. You know, I have to tell you, John has done extraordinary work here. We also sent out a questionnaire. And if you haven't responded to the questionnaire in what area you want to get involved in, please do so now. We take it seriously. This is our response so far. You know, 50% want to do state government and 15% editorial publications, etc. And we look at your comments. You know, someone said, I humbly request, let's see, add another category, other. Well, the one, we just sent this out again a day or two ago, and we added a miscellaneous other category for Archons to self-identify your time, talent, and treasure. So again, we offer our profound gratitude and respect to our worldwide spiritual father, to the Archbishop, to Father Alex and Presbytera. This is the photo that we used when they received the Athenagoras Human Rights Award in 2018, at which time a record-breaking sponsorship program came through, which was the seed money for the Patriarchal Foundation. Thank you, Father Alex. And you know, this is an important slide because this represents the people who make it happen. It's not us, it's them. It's them who help us, who critique our work. You know, Maria has gone over this slide presentation a zillion times. She's gone over my statements, my written, my speeches, etc. I know Helen Bazanellis and Joanne Kakoyanis and all the other wives, Aphrodite, etc., and Sonia, who help and assist and are behind. And someday, I pray that we'll stand side by side as brother and sister Archons. Brother and sister Archons. But I salute our beloved families, Joni Zavitsanos. Okay. Our staff is unbelievable. John Mandala does all the graphics, and John, unbelievable job today. All the graphics you see, all the PowerPoints, or the keynotes, to this, to that, that's John. Krista Puro, who's worked day and night. Those beautiful gift boxes, that's Krista Puro. Andrew Viniopoulos, who helps with the treasury. And I have to say, John Zavitanos' idea was the gift box. Great contribution. Anyway, there are so many people who helped with the virtual Archon Weekend. These are just some of them. Archon Sergio Delajanis was a technical guy who helped us with the help desk and gave us guidance. And Ted Vagelos, I have to tell you, his work, you know, I hesitated to reach out to him. He volunteered to help us. He volunteered to help us, and I wanted to accommodate him to help us. And really, he's come through loud and clear. Archon-elect Ted, thank you so much. And you know, every presentation I make, I end up with honoring our beloved Nicholas J. Boris, who's so well represented by the Honorable Archon Basil Theodore Bazanellis, Judge Ted, as we affectionately call him, who's our national secretary, who's the secretary of the Archdiocese of America. He so ably represents NJB. Thank you, Archon Ted. Thank you, NJB in heaven, because he continues to enable us. He's 100,000. He gives at least $100,000 or $200,000 a year to the order. Think about that. While he walked on the earth, I remember the first time he gave $100,000 in 1998. I was in his hotel suite. It was the Athenagoras Human Rights Award honoring Nana Muscari. It was held in March during Orthodoxy Sunday. And in his usual low-key manner, he says, Anthony, I have to talk to you for a moment. It was in his top 4 suite. I walked over. Yeah, what do you need, Nick? I gave you 50. I think we need to do better. Here's another 50. Let's make it 100 even. And that's how he acted. Every year he would just do that. It was really unbelievable. And Nick, we salute you and salute you and salute you. God rest your beloved soul. He just had his name day on December 6th. Zuisasas, Zuisamas. And this was directed to all the Archons, but especially the Archons-elect. We're looking forward to embracing you. You're becoming Archons of the great Church of Christ. You're obligated to become Christ-like. You're obligated to become a defender of the faith and fellow workers with God. God bless, and let us now defend the religious freedom of the Holy Mother Church. Thank you so all very much.